Hi, my name is Kyle, and this year I'm a summer intern at the Olive Branch. For those of you who are new, I'd like to give you a special welcome, and for those of you returning, we're glad to have you back. This year, we weren't able to have camp as normal, but with a little bit of creativity and by the grace of God, we were able to have a successful camp in a box. For those of you facing some challenges or difficulties, I want you to keep in mind what Paul wrote in Philippians 4 verse 13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Thanks for joining us online today, but if you would like to connect with us further, please check out our Facebook, Instagram, and our website. Now, let's give God some glory with some worship.
Oh, I heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I heard a tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love, you're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am.
Thanks, Dan, for the song. Always love hearing your voice, always have, and so glad to have you at kind of the beginning of things today. Just wanted to mention something that Dan and I have been planning. When we get into September, probably towards the end of September, we're actually going to invite those of you who would like to come into the taping sessions when we're taping the messages. We'll still show them every Sunday at 10, but just want to invite some of you who may want to come as kind of a start back into some sort of normalcy. So you think about that probably becoming about the third week in September. I was surprised recently to find out that the show Survivor is still on. Some of you probably don't even know what that is. Started 20 years ago, 40 seasons in, and they're still going strong. The appeal of earning or winning $1 million actually does kind of take you up over the edge. So you may not know what it is, but basically what it is, a bunch of strangers get basically isolated on an island or some faraway place, and they have to create their own food, find their own shelter, find their own entertainment. Now, here's the point of the show. They get together on a semi-regular basis, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's like semi-weekly, and to figure out who's going to stay and who's going to get voted off the island, okay? Because the person is not liked, or they're disruptive, or they're not adding value to the team, something like that. So their core values are outwit, outplay, outlast. And if you've ever watched the show, you know that there's a lot of sneaky stuff that goes on behind the scenes, people teaming up, trying to get other people voted off, and so on. And Survivor is actually the name of the game in our world. It starts really young. Kids are taught in school, the survival of the fittest, and then they learn that in the classroom, and then they live it out in the classroom, and especially live it out on the playground. And every single day in our world, there's some kid in some school that gets voted off the island. It just happens. It happens in boardrooms. It happens, in families. It happens in all kinds of arenas of our lives. In our culture, what do you do if you have a spouse that isn't measuring up to your standards, or, isn't playing by the rules that you agreed to? Well, you vote them off the island, right? What do you do if a politician doesn't deliver on their promises, doesn't seem to be accomplishing what they set out to do? You vote them off the island. What do you do if you have a pastor who preaches too long, and he doesn't meet your expectations? Well, the biblical word would be to show grace under those circumstances. But unfortunately, the core values of Survivor have become the core values pretty much of everyday life in North America. Outwit, like I'm going to be smarter than you, I'm going to be trickier than you, I'm going to go behind the scenes. Outplay, I'm going to rise to the top of my class, and of course, outlast. You eliminate the competition, you get ahead, you get your piece of the pie, you survive no matter what you have to do to win. Now, survival is actually a good thing, right? Our instincts, lead us towards survival. It's our instincts towards survival that, help us to eat less than we should, It's, not driving 50 kilometers over the speed limit, driving only 30 kilometers over the speed limit. It's what causes people to wear masks in a COVID-19 world, and distance from other people. But the need to survive, if you have got to survive, if that's your game plan, I'll tell you, it can be ugly, it can be selfish, and it can be brutal. You get right down to it, it's animal behavior, isn't it? Where antelope goes out there and just munching on grass, and the cheetah goes up and says, I got to survive, and I'm going to eat you to survive. And that's kind of what happens. Paul, who in this book of Philippians is talking about what it means to live on higher ground, says this, totally different. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. The need to survive at all costs, to vote everybody off the island, that's survival of the fittest, and it kind of fits with the evolutionary theory that Charles Darwin came up, that we all came from this blob, this one-celled organism, and kind of evolved into, a Charles Darwin. Jesus said that if you live that way, that if the main goal of your life is to basically preserve you, he says, you will lose your life. You will lose your life. And Paul, who enjoyed it and who enjoyed life and wanted to live as much as I do and as much as you do, said, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. And basically what he was saying is, I don't need to survive. I don't need to survive. And that's why Paul's still influencing people after 2,000 years after he wrote these words. See, here's the deal. You see, if you plan to survive until you die, like if that's your game plan, you're going to do that, no problem at all. But the problem is you've got to do better than that. You've got to live on higher ground than that. Now, let's talk about the context, because the context always clarifies what somebody is talking about. And it's especially true of Paul's mission statement. Based on what Paul knew about Jesus, he knew that God had sent him on a dangerous mission. Following Jesus, you see, never was about getting people to get through life unscathed. He doesn't create some kind of a magic bubble so that we can just bounce through life and end up on the end okay. He made it clear through all of his teachings, and I'm just going to say this because I think that it fits it kind of summarizes his message. This is not a game to win. We are on a mission to save everything and everyone. And this mission will likely cost you your comfort, your safety, and your ego. And it may cost you your life. But in the end, you'll find life. If you run for your life, if you try to make your life and survival the end point of what you're doing, if you make it about yourself, if it's all about self-preservation, you'll lose your life. When Jesus confronted and blinded Paul on his way to Damascus, he later sent a prophet, Ananias, to come and heal him. And he told Ananias, this is what I want you to say to Paul. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name's sake. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, it's kind of a mild description of what actually happened to Paul. I mean, he was chased by mobs. He was jailed, beaten. He was flogged, stoned, lied about, finally placed on death row. And that's where you find him here. Now, what he's saying here, he says, for me to live is Christ and die is gain. This is not some kind of a death wish, for somebody to euthanize him. He wasn't saying, just put me out of my misery. No, this whole letter is about joy and not about self-pity. He had already told them, don't feel sorry for me. And he would tell them at the end of this section, for you have been given not only, listen to this, the privilege of trusting in Christ, but also the privilege of suffering for him. And when you look at Paul's circumstances, it becomes a little bit clearer why he would bring this up. Because he was in a very dangerous situation. He had to think about death because death was imminent, But he had to think about survival too. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard, let me just describe a little bit of what he was in. If you've ever heard of Emperor Nero, you know that the best way to describe this guy was that he was insane and he was narcissistic and he was sadistic. His philosophy basically was to outwit, outplay, and outlast. That's exactly what he did. If he had to kill you, he'd do that just to get his way and to make sure that he lived on. And some of the people who followed Jesus, got dipped in wax and burned in his garden. Some died by being torn apart at the Roman games in the Roman arena. And this is interesting because Paul, you see, lived just probably yards away. Where he was in prison was just yards away from where this insane guy was running the world. So, you see, Paul's mission statement actually is just a very clear reflection of reality. But he knew that the instant, you see, that he passed from this life and people came to gawk at his headless, mangled body, that he wouldn't be there. That he would be with Jesus. He would be with Christ. When he took his last breath, that's where he would go. And he said, if I stay, then I know that God has something planned for me. He wants to continue using me in his mission to change the world, and he would make a difference. I don't need to survive. Now, first, to say, for me to live is Christ and to die is vain. I mean, it may not make sense to any of you. It sounds terribly spiritual and maybe a little archaic. And if I said that to you, you'd probably say, come on, Davis, live in the real words. Stop being a drama queen. But Paul was not trying to impress anybody with what he said here. He wasn't trying to impress people that he was just a spiritual person and I don't mind if I die and for me to live as Christ. What he was pointing out, and this is true of you and me, is that our lives get quite cluttered. They really do. You got work and credit card bills, and don't forget to pick up some hot dog buns on the way home and wear your mask, and it's just stuff that just demands our attention all the time. It gets cluttered. People talk about how near-death experiences them kind of take them beyond that. If you've ever heard somebody talk about that, they basically say, it just brought this clarity to my life about what matters and what doesn't. Now, Paul, had been there. Paul had had these near-death experiences, where he was stoned once. He had helped kill Stephen by doing that. So he knew, the end. He knew what it was like. You're laying there, bleeding from your head, dead. He knew what that looked like. And when death brushes you and the hair stands up on the back of your neck, all of a sudden there's a lot of stuff that doesn't matter. Like the scratch on your Mercedes, like the cashier, that treated you with disrespect, like the year-end bonus, suddenly it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference at all. Paul knew that Christ wasn't Jesus' last name, It wasn't like the son of, Joseph Christ and Mary Christ. It means sovereign king over everything. It was God's chosen one who will set the world right. And his words, you see, are a challenge. And the question he's asking, for me to live as Christ, in other words, have I given him his rightful place in my life as the king over everything, the ruler of all, instead of being somebody I think about at the end of my day? See, when you settle the core issue of your life, like Paul did, you can relax about your own survival. You can relax about the survival of your own ego and what's going to happen to your stuff and about your company and everything else when you die. Paul's bottom line was death, being with Jesus, means being with Jesus. Life means living for Jesus. I can't lose. He wrote this: I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I am to go on living in this body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. And yet what shall I choose? I don't know. I'm torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far, but is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. And it would appear from what Paul says here that the only thing he's worried about is that he's going to get to the point where they're about to take off his head and he's going to chicken out and shame the one who died in humiliation for him. That's his fear. But then there's this other part to Paul's mission statement here: to die is gain. Now, if you love and follow Jesus, you know this is true. You know that when we're a little scared of the process, at least I am. But it's not like I don't know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen when I die, that I'm going to be with Christ. And so it's actually going to be better for me when that happens. To die is gain. Now, here's the deal though. If you're like 34 years old and you're a dad or a mom with 3 children under 5, to say that to your spouse or your kids, that's not going to be impressive to them, because you see, it's pretty important that you stay there. Paul says this in the context of that what makes staying alive good is that he can help more people. He can make a difference in their lives. So his circumstances obviously were different than ours. Listen to what he says. As long as I'm alive in this body, there's good work for me to do. If I had to choose right now, I would hardly know which I'd choose. Hard choice. The desire to break camp here and be with Christ is powerful. Some days I can think of nothing better. But most days, because of what you are going through, I am sure that it's better for me to stick it out here. So I plan to be around for a while. Now, it's so important to understand that these are Paul's circumstances. This is not a universally applicable principle, that, it's okay if I die and leave everybody behind and so on. One of the things that this confronts is kind of one of the myths in our culture, that when people die, you look at them in the coffin, they look very peaceful lying there and so on. The truth is that a mortician gets paid an awful lot of money to put that expression on their faces. So they're not necessarily at peace. And let's just be as clear as we possibly can on this, you see. From a biblical perspective and from Jesus' perspective and from what we know about life and death, death only brings peace when you're prepared for it, okay? When a person leaves a trail of bloodshed and they leave a trail of chaos and all these wounded people in their path, to die doesn't just automatically erase all of that. It just doesn't, okay? So it's peaceful for people who are prepared for it. I don't know about you, but I have these nightmares about being unprepared for something, for me, it's usually I'm supposed to get up and speak and I can't find my pants and I can't find my notes and I don't have anything to say and people are trying to leave or starting to leave and stuff like this. Let me describe what it means to be prepared for death. Paul talks about this in his letter to Timothy, in 2 Timothy. He says this: the time when I will leave is near. So listen to how he's prepared for that to happen. I have fought the good fight. In other words, I didn't just bail and float downstream. I have finished the race. I didn't just, jump out of the race, halfway through it. I finished the race, and I have kept the faith, kept my faith in Jesus. And now there is a crown waiting for me. It's given to those, listen to this, it's given to those who are right with God. You want to be prepared. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd be real excited about facing Jesus, if I'd basically ignored him for most of my life, lived for myself instead of being part of his mission and left a whole bunch of unforgiven, hurting, bitter people in my way. I wouldn't be real excited about seeing him having defied everything he said to live for. But when you're ready, when you're in the center of God's plan, when you've let him lead you and let him correct you and let him help you and let him find you when he's come looking for you, and if you've let him help you become like his son Jesus and become loving and generous and kind, then it is an awesome thing to leave this life and to be with him. And just as a note, like we got some pretty goofy, illustrations of what heaven is like. You got the Philadelphia cream cheese commercial, about heaven, You have to understand that heaven isn't kind of the ultimate retirement home, where everybody goes to get shelved for all of eternity. You don't float around on clouds playing harps, doing nothing, eating bagels with cream cheese on them. Heaven is amazing. It's an amazing, beautiful place that goes way beyond anything that you and I can even imagine. Now, just to answer some questions, some people wonder if there's going to be golf in heaven because they really love golf. So, anyways, I would have to say no. No golf in heaven because heaven is a place where you can't lie or cheat or curse. So no golf in heaven. But there is fishing, I understand. It tells us, that there's a stream coming out from the throne of God, and I understand that there are great fish in there. The problem is that I understand also that it's catch and release, because it's heaven. So in my opinion, that's kind of like, decaffeinated coffee. What's the point? But heaven is going to be amazing. People say, remember the old song, I've got a mansion over the hilltop, that streets of gold and stuff. It's not made of hard stuff. Heaven isn't about diamonds and pearls and gold and silver and platinum and stuff, because that stuff doesn't really matter up there. There's apparently astounding work to do. There's places where we can use our gifts and talents and skills, but without the frustration that we have in using them here. It's where all the relationships are whole, all of them. You don't have to, you don't have to eggshell around anybody. You don't have to worry that somebody's talking about you behind your back. You don't have to worry about relationships crashing and burning, because it's a place where all the relationships are whole and life-giving, and you're loved and accepted as you are. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what life would be like that? And to be with Jesus and have all the frustration and sadness and heaviness and regret removed, and be in a place where you were loved and accepted and have power. To have a body, that doesn't just do what you want it to do. It doesn't just look like you want it to look. It's a body that can do things that you never even dreamed you could do. I mean, it's a beautiful, powerful place. But you don't want to go there until God is ready for you. Paul says, but don't worry about my dying. I'm not going to go before my time. And I think I have some business to do in your lives. He says, I will continue for your progress and joy in the faith, so that through my being with you again, your joy in Jesus Christ will overflow. Here's what you need to understand. God is not up in heaven, and Paul shows up and says, oh my word, I didn't expect you. Now, how did the thing with Nero go? No one gets surprised. God is the one who calls us to our home. Paul says, I'm going to stay around to bring you joy. That is so convicting. Because I'm tempted to think, well, what about my joy? I want to stay around, bring me some joy. He says, no, I'm going to stay here because I know it will bring you joy. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. That's not just the high road. That is a powerful way to live. You see, in total contrast to the game Survivor, it's saying, I don't have to survive. The game of Survivor says, I must survive at all costs because, I'm going to get $1 million if I do. Now, it sounds otherworldly, doesn't it? And yet, it really isn't. It really isn't otherworldly. Let's go back to the ancient game that was started back in the year 2000, Survivor. What's it about? It's about, like the name says, surviving. If everything, what you have to do, if necessary, is get everyone else rejected, everyone else tossed off the island, voted off the island, except you. And so it means saving your skin and getting $1 million for doing it. Now, here's the question I want to ask. Is anyone in this world handing out huge awards to people whose main goal is to have their ego survive and to survive at all costs, no matter what it does to anybody else? Have you ever seen a great movie made of that, and sat there and cried at the end of the movie and thought, wow, that's so amazing. They saved themselves. They survived. It killed off everybody else, but they survived. You ever lived next to somebody like that or had a friend like that? Do whatever it costs to save your own skin, and you're one of the casualties, but it's okay because they survived. That is not a way. That is not a good way to live. It's not a good way. They don't make good friends. They don't make good bosses. If somebody's goal as the CEO of a company is I must at all costs survive, then that means something. It means they're on their way out for the most part. And there are people, I must preserve my money at all costs. I must preserve my body at all costs. I'm going to nip and tuck and spackle my way to the fountain of youth if I have to. And it's a suffocating, selfish way to live. And nobody wants to be around people who live like that. Jesus said, if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And that's God's final word to people who play the game of survivor. When your goal is to save your skin or save your ego or save your position or save your job or save your youth or save your money or your health, what has happened is you have just put everyone else, put yourself ahead of everyone else and everything else, and you've also made yourself vulnerable to anything that can take you out of the game. Your life has to be about something that's bigger than yourself. And when it is, that's the first step toward higher ground. That's the first step toward living with significance. I recently reread an incident in Paul's life that really shows how powerful this is when it actually gets lived out. Paul is on this ship, and you read about it at the end of the book of Acts, and he's being hauled off to Rome. So he's just kind of like part of the cargo. There's a centurion there who's guarding his life. So he has no voice, he has no status, anything. There's 200 people on this ship or more, and he's kind of at the bottom of the food chain here. Well, they get into serious problems. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Perfect Storm, but this is kind of what happened. Nasty storm. It's basically a typhoon, and all of a sudden, everybody wants to listen to Paul because he's got a connection with God. And you have to read the story, but it's just so cool because Paul, through this whole thing, starts at the bottom, and because of his character and because of his life and because of his concern and love for everybody else there on board, by the time they get to the island, Malta, he's the hero. And nobody even had to get voted off the island. You think about it. What can you do to crush someone whose mission statement in life is, I don't have to survive. I don't have to survive. Someone who forgives people who hate them and abuse them. Somebody who's not concerned that everybody understand his rights and know his rights and out to basically preserve his ego. That is a powerful way to live. And you survive simply because you live that way. Now, here's my question as we close this morning. Would you want to put your mission statement on a t-shirt? Like, I made this t-shirt, and if somebody wants to buy it, it goes to the highest bidder. What do you think? I think it's pretty cool. Me, I must survive. Now, if that's your mission statement in life, and for some people it is, then if you're wearing the t-shirt, and you go around and say, no, I want to live for others. I don't need to survive. Well, you're kind of, the way you're living is kind of defying what you've got already on your t-shirt. So a mission statement, which is what this is for Paul, for me to live as Christ and to die as gain, it's the focal point. It's the grid through which you make all your decisions and where you accomplish all your actions. For example, our mission statement at the Olive Branch has transform at the core. We want to be transformed people who are transformed by the good news of Jesus, and we don't want to just keep it within. We want to have a transforming effect on our world. It's to basically seek and save those who are lost to God, just like Jesus said. And Paul is short and direct about this. He says, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. So this is very concise. What's your mission statement? Like if you were to put it on your t-shirt, what would it be? What is the guiding principle of your life that you seek to live by every day that shapes the decisions that you make? Now, here's what I want you to do. If you have a small group that you're a part of or a core of friends that you're a part of, and I was to sit down with them and say, okay, let's talk about Fred, whatever your name is, and like, what do you think? Like, what does he live for? Like, what's most important in his life? What would they say? So I just have some principles here, okay? So there's some people for whom their org chart is me and everyone else. But let's talk about some of the priorities, okay? What would the people who know you best say about your career advancement and how you feel about it? Now, would it be high priority, like it's one of the driving forces in your life? Medium, it's there, but it's not, preeminent. Low, it's kind of somewhere down the food chain. So what would they say about you? That like your career is a big deal in your life, and you will do anything to get where you want to go. Is that it? Would it be high? Would it be medium or low? What about good times? Would people say, you know what, she's the ultimate party animal. She will cancel everything in her life to go to a party and be the life of the party. That's the big deal in her life. Or is it, yeah, she likes parties. What about family? It's very popular to say, oh, my family, yeah, that's so important to me. I'd do anything for them. And yet, there's some people, and your friends might say, you know what, he'd trample all over his family to get to where he wants to go or do what he wants to do or do what she wants to do because that's kind of what's going on. Where's it at? What about freedom and autonomy? Where's that at on your priority list? Would you say high, medium, or low? There are some people who say, I am the master of my own ship. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. That's the big deal in my life. What would your friends say about you? What about money? I mean, most people would not say, oh yeah, well, money's the big deal in my life, and honestly, I'd do anything for money, although some people do. But what would your friends say about the importance of money in your life? It's like, this is a big deal, and you'll do anything to make a buck or save a buck? What about, is it medium? Is it low? What would they say? What would your friends say about your faith in God? Like that it's important that it shapes your decisions, it shapes your priorities, that is the most important thing, or at least one of the most important things in your life, or is it kind of like, well, I bring it in if I get in trouble? What would they say about your faith in God? What about possessions? I mean, it's not popular to say, oh, my stuff is really important to me, and yet, there's a lot of people, for instance, for whom that's what, they put out there to show everybody how important they are. Where is it at? Would your friends say it's a high, like it's a big deal, or it's medium or low? What about your generosity and compassion? Do you look for ways to show your generosity, to help other people, to make a difference in your life? Is that high, or is it somewhere down the food chain, or is it low? Not a big deal for you. Recreation. And this is like, yeah, it's outdoor stuff, sometimes it's sports, sometimes it's going to movies or restaurants or whatever. But like, is it a big deal in your life? Is it like the most prominent thing, or is it somewhere on the medium, or is it low? What about the church? Because, our faith and sometimes the church can be very different. The church has to do with Jesus' mission. It's about engaging with other people, using your gifts to help them, letting them use their gifts to help you. It's the place where we come together to accomplish the mission and to celebrate the mission of God. What about social media, getting known by other people? Is that high, medium, or low? Like, if you've got 1,000 pictures of yourself jamming up your phone, I think that says something, right? And what about friendships? Like, friendship is really important, but some people collect friends like baseball cards, and their friendships, like, they will do anything. It will defy anybody or defy any moral standard for their friends, because their friends are the most important thing in their life. So those are some things you see that kind of would determine what your mission statement is. There's another thing that also determines it, and that is, like, what do you dream about? Like, when you are by yourself and you have free time, what do you think about? Because where your mind goes says something about what your mission statement is and what is most important in your life, what your value system is about. Where do you spend discretionary time? Like, when you have time to use, where does it go? How do you spend it? What about your money? When you have money, when you have discretionary money to use, like, where does it go? Because this says something, you see, about what is most important in your life. If somebody looked at your financial records, if somebody looked at the calendar on your phone, if somebody looked at, if somebody could look at your thought life and stuff like this, what would be the core thing that would come out and shine at the top of all this? And here's the question. based on what you think your friends would say about you, based on kind of your own personal self-evaluation, your dreams and how you spend your money and time. Like, what is your current mission statement, really? Like, what is it? Not what you put on your t-shirt, not what you put at the top of your Instagram because it sounds cool, or on your stationery. What is it? Lots of different ones out there. Some of you have probably seen on somebody's bumper, it says back off. For some people, that's their mission statement. Don't mess with me, back off, get away from my life. Other people, you see this, usually in the back of, pickup trucks by rednecks down in the States. He who dies with the most toys wins. There are some people where that is literally what they're doing, So I've seen another one. I'm not sure I'd want to put it on a t-shirt or anything, but my body isn't a temple. It's an amusement park. There's some people for whom that would absolutely be true. It's about, doing what I need to do to make me happy with my body. Would you put your real mission statement on a t-shirt and wear it for everybody to see? See, in our world, the basic mission statement, the default mode on this is I need to survive at all costs. And I will vote you off the island to do that if I have to. And Paul says, I don't need to survive. I don't have to survive. Years ago, I started thinking about this, and I took a personal retreat and took time out to write a mission statement for my life, and I have it tucked away in my records. You can tell how old it is because it was printed on a pen printer, right? So anyways, I came up with this mission statement, and I thought, okay, love was obviously at the core of what Jesus said to do, love God, love others and stuff. So the thing I came up with was to bask in God's amazing love and then to return it to him and then pass it on to others. That's what I came up with. And I know it's nothing earth-shattering and stuff, but I thought if I can do that, if I can love, if Paul says, that you can do amazing things, but if you don't love at the end of your life, if nobody feels loved, then you're nothing. So I thought, okay, I need to put that into my heart. God's mission statement, if you read through, the Bible and through the New Testament in particular, is about grace. Jesus said, you summarize everything if you love God and love other people. Jesus said, I came to seek and to save the lost. That's obviously important. He said, I didn't come to serve, but to serve. And it's the greatest people in this world who will serve other people. So I'm thinking that somewhere between all of those things would be a great mission statement. But it should be something that's true of you. You see, here's the deal. You can change your mission statement. You can. And the question I want to ask is there anybody in your world? Is there anybody in your world who would say, I am so glad that they had the mission statement that they did because it changed my life? So we've got to think about the future, right? We always have to think about the future. I was been hearing recently about Tesla and about basically it's Elon Musk who basically founded the company. They've got great cars and their stock is going up and to the right. So I would just say if you're going to invest in stock, that might be a good one to think about, as opposed to investing in CDs or typewriters, or things like that, or incandescent bulbs. Probably be a good thing to get involved with something like Tesla. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff they're coming up with in terms of they've got this truck coming out, just unbelievable, okay? So this guy, Elon Musk, is thinking about the future, just like the person that he named his company after, Nikola Tesla. So that's what you want to do. There are people who are really good when it comes to thinking about the future and what's going to, go up in value and so on. But when it comes to their own personal life, they don't think 2 years in advance about what's really going to matter. See, here's what I know. You can invest in Tesla stock, and it'll probably keep going up over the next, 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years. But I'm telling you, when you die, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because the stock all of a sudden loses all of its value in your life. I mean, it may still be going up, but it doesn't make any difference to you. But investing in other people, I don't need to survive. It keeps on going beyond the grave. And I'm thinking that's probably where you want to invest in. If your thought is my ego must survive, well, I'm telling you it won't, because all this stuff ends right here. It won't survive. But when you can truthfully say, I don't have to survive, then your life goes beyond yourself. Would you be willing to do that? Let's pray. God, a lot of times we see all these things and they're attractive and we're like fish going after a lure, and we get sucked in and then we get hooked on things, and sometimes it doesn't really matter at all. Sometimes we get addicted to them. Sometimes we just get taken advantage of. And I pray that as your people, God, as people who are interested in what you have to say, that you will help us to live for something that matters, something that goes way beyond this life and on into eternity. Help us to see reality as it really is and see ourselves as we really are. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Dan's going to come and sing, and then I want to close with just a thought and a benediction.
You're here, the grace of the Savior, the heart of the Father. You're all we need. You're here, the hands of the healer, the power of your Spirit. You're all we need. At the mention of your name, every chain will break. I know everything will change. Jesus, just the whisper of your name will silence wind and waves at the mention of your name. You're here, you're the provider, and all I've ever needed, Jesus, you supply. You're here with wonder-working power, and everything you breathe on is coming back to life. At the mention of your name, every chain will break. I know everything will change. Jesus, just a whisper of your name will silence wind and waves at the mention of your name. You are my strength, you are my anchor, and you never fail. You are my hope, you will deliver. Emmanuel, you are my strength, you are my anchor, and you never fail. You are my hope, you will deliver. At the mention of your name, every chain will break. I know everything will change. Jesus, just the whisper of your name will silence wind and waves at the mention of your name. I know everything will change. Jesus, just a whisper of your name will silence wind and waves at the mention of your name.
So, what's your mission statement? And do you want it to change from what it currently is? My challenge as you go, my blessing on you, is that you would live for something that matters. I know that's what you want to do. That's what God wants you to do. But you have to see it clearly. What do you want to give your life to? May you invest your life this week in other people instead of ego, instead of the stuff that's going to go by the wayside, in powerful and meaningful way in the lives of other people around you. Amen.